Welcome back to Neon Galactic, a podcast produced by Keat TV in Northern California. I'm your host, James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Whatever you think about UFOs, NHI, government secrecy, and all the rest, the situation now unfolding in New Jersey, New York, over American bases and airports, and increasingly all around the country and world, where what seems like drones and orbs are being sighted with haunting regularity by virtually everyone, it's worrisome in the extreme. Information from state and federal authorities who spend billions every year to stay ahead of the technological curve on defense and surveillance has not been forthcoming. The only admission they seem willing to make is one of ignorance. They don't know what's buzzing our homes, neighborhoods, sensitive military sites, and more, or so they claim. The drones themselves seem to evade capture, maneuver around our best tech, go dark when followed, and tease us with their obviousness and ubiquity. There are a lot of these things, and they're very clearly in control of this situation. My guest today, Birdie Jaworski, has been on the show before. To get a sense of her background and history, I recommend folks watch that interview, which will be linked in the description. It's absolutely worthwhile. She has a fascinating story and is an expert in remote viewing, the method developed by psychics, academics, and U.S. military and intelligence services to gather information in non-traditional ways. It's a kind of clairvoyance many claim is available to almost anyone. Jaworski has taken those initial protocols and redesigned them into what she says is a more neutral and effective modality called transdimensional mapping. Earlier this month, she used her skills to examine the drone situation, then posted the results on her YouTube channel, linked in the description. Since then, some of her claims, including very particular details, have been confirmed by pilot sightings and other information. We're going to talk about what she saw, how it apparently deeply unsettled her, and what she makes of what's now unfolding. Welcome back to the show, Birdie.
Thanks for having me on again, James. I'm very excited to talk about what's happening today.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably like me and like a lot of other folks have been absolutely riveted to social media, kind of watching this situation unfold. It was a week ago now, or maybe a little bit less, that I stumbled upon your video. And it was fascinating to watch the process by which you work. I mean, the camera was focused on the drawings, but I saw your hands involved and profile of your face, and it seemed like I got a glimpse of some magic there, which was cool. But the information you came up with was, as you said, I think, sort of unsettling and different than what people would have thought if they were just going to sit back and diagnose some sort of, non-human participation in this whole thing. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, I was hoping to get from you how you got tasked with this particular thing. And were you told to survey the orbs, or were you told, or the drones, or were you told to kind of something more general that just sort of ended up being that? How did that come about?
A friend of mine who is also a remote viewer and who works with me gave me a task, and a task is something that you are going to remote view. And I did this session blind, meaning I didn't know what I was going to be looking at. I was only given a set of 8 random numbers, 2 sets of 4 random numbers that they had associated with one of the photographs that were taken of these mysterious objects in the sky. And this photograph was taken by somebody in New Jersey, one of those many photos that has appeared on the news since this whole situation has begun. And so I didn't know what it was going to be. I started working and I did about 45 minutes to start. I normally do a 2-hour session, but I had to stop because it made me feel completely creeped out. I ended up completing the session over the next 2 days. And it was after that point that it was revealed what it is to me. But by then I kind of knew what it was, or at least suspected. So, and I'm going to
Now,
be
go ahead.
sharing the rest of the session online as well.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned also when we were communicating about doing this interview that you had sort of also engaged your students with some of this and that some of their results were similar. Can you talk about what that looked like and where they may have confirmed your sightings or your take and where they may have differed?
Yeah, I had a class that I just completed teaching yesterday a 5-day class in transdimensional mapping, my form of remote viewing. And I had 30 students in the class. This was an online class, and we held this over Zoom. And they would always, after each task I would give them, they would share their work. And on the second day, when they knew they were just getting basic photographs of things, I tasked them with the same photograph that I had been given of the drone. And they were shocked because they started getting non-human intelligence associated with this. They thought it was going to be another photo of something like the Taj Mahal or Niagara Falls, something basic. But all of a sudden, they started getting strange alien type data. And these are new students only on their second day of training. And they were drawing strange objects in the sky. They were drawing helicopters in the sky, much like I had drawn. And they were also drawing red spirals, just like I had gotten in my session. And I couldn't believe it that they were verifying everything that I had gotten. And, their work, because they're new, didn't have as much data as mine did, but they were touching on these aspects, which was fascinating.
Yeah, no, it is. And the fact that there have been reports that have come out since your video was released from, interestingly, pilots on the West Coast who had encountered orbs or something like that over the ocean, and very much that whole red spiral thing came up. But so, can you sort of give us an explanation of what it is you think you figured out through this process? I know that it's a lot of times you can't tell until you've been able to confirm the facts on the ground, and we don't know those yet. But what do you think that you glimpsed, and how would you explain what it is, and then ultimately why it left you so unsettled?
Yeah, what I ended up getting, and like you said, all of this hasn't been confirmed. And in remote viewing, it's always important to get confirmation at some point, because that helps you understand your own process in interpreting your data. But what I really sensed, and it was so strong, was a non-human presence. And it wasn't a non-human presence that I have remote viewed in the past, which was fascinating to me, because I have looked at, over almost 30 years of remote viewing, so many different classic UFO cases, the Roswell crash, all kinds of interesting things. And this didn't feel like that. This felt different, but it was definitely non-human. It was also strange in that the craft itself, the alleged drone that I was looking at, was actually coming across as having some kind of sentience itself, which it was very different than human sentience or sentience that I have ever looked at using this process. It was very different. It actually gave me a message, almost like messages I have received in the past, kind of an encapsulated package of messages. I call that a thought ball when I
A
get one
thought
of
ball. And I
those.
remember
Yeah.
watching the video, you're all, it's a thought ball. And I was like, I know what that is.
Yeah, that's kind of my word for it. But yeah,
Yeah.
so, and it was so interesting. It was terribly difficult to decode. And there's so much more in there that I don't even know what it is. There seemed to be a lot of, um, concepts that I can't comprehend, like just can't in this human body. And with my level of intellect, maybe somebody much more intelligent than I could dissect this. But it was definitely a message about how they're watching us. They want us to watch them. They're here for a particular reason. They're replicating. That I kept getting over and over throughout the session, that they're replicating, that they travel down into the water, they come back up, and there are more of them. There are constantly replicating, and that there are thousands right now in the skies, and there will be more. That's kind of the gist of what I was getting. The other kind of interesting thing that started to come out in the first session I posted online, and then in the subsequent work I did on the session, was this military presence, kind of a U.S. military type presence. And by military, I don't mean traditional military. I mean more like black ops kind of military, that there were some of their craft in the sky as well, monitoring the situation, trying to get a handle on it, and they were very, very, very confused. I also got that these objects have been giving messages to pilots, that several pilots have received kind of a thought ball like message as well. And that was really interesting to get into the minds of the pilots and find out how unsettled they were, which made me even more unsettled, that
Yeah.
these highly trained military pilots are getting messages and they're creeped out as well. But the overall feeling wasn't that these objects are dangerous or that what's happening is dangerous to humanity. It didn't feel malevolent whatsoever. I wouldn't call it benevolent per se, at least from an anthropocentric kind of framework. I think
Yeah.
in their minds, or whatever you want to call it, they feel they're being helpful in some way.
Did you get a sense that there was a point to what they're doing? I mean, they want to be noticed. They are out for a purpose, which I kind of got from your session, that they're tired, I think you had said, and they're fed up, kind of, and that this is their uh, I mean, basically, to sum up what I got out of what you out of that session is that they're tired of what we're doing to the planet. It seems like, and that this is their sort of immunological response to that, and they're engaging with us to show us that we need to stop that. Can you confirm or deny that? And then also,
Yes.
is this all it's going to be, or is this accelerating toward some sort of punctuation? I know that I was talking to people online, and they were saying that the winter solstice is often a powerful point for initiation in the past, and that may somehow play into this. I mean, obviously, we're all just shooting in the dark, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely got that they're very concerned about humanity at this point. And it was kind of a complex mishmash of reasons why. One of them truly is this nuclear threat that we're constantly putting ourselves under just by squabbling across the world, and of course there's been the escalation with
Yeah.
Russia and Ukraine.
And
Um,
possibly the moving of assets
and
around,
the
which would,
moving of assets. Yeah, because this really started in the UK with seeing drones over the military installations there. And I definitely got that they're very concerned about that, but they're also concerned about how we live just generally. There was this overall sensation that they didn't like how kind of the class warfare that we have, the sense that some people have so much and some people have so little. They're concerned about how we treat each other, how we're treating this planet. There's this sense that they share this planet with us, even though they don't originate from here, but they feel some kind of ownership over the water and over the land. Uh, Kind of caretakers, as you will. They're also very concerned about the sun, which was super interesting and
yeah,
something I did not expect to get. That they were seriously monitoring the sun's activity. Now we're heading into solar maximum. We're kind of in the beginning part of solar maximum, which should arrive over the next months. And we have seen some large solar flares. We even had an aurora here in New Mexico, of all places,
yeah,
very south for an aurora a couple of months ago when those solar flares occurred and we had the coronal mass ejection that hit our atmosphere. And
yeah.
they seem to have a real concern about the sun's activity. And their concern wasn't related to anything we're doing about the sun or with the sun. It was more concerned about the sun itself. And there seemed to be something that they were planning as well. This does seem to be escalating. That definitely came across to me. And I don't think we're going to see a reduction in this activity. I think it's going to just keep increasing. And I think people are waking up to this, honestly. A lot of people across the world are asking questions, and now people are seeing these drones
Yeah.
all over the United States and in many other countries over the past week, the past few days. More and more sightings. It seems to be spreading out.
It seems to be shutting down military bases. Wright-Patterson's airport functions got shut down for a little while. There was Stewart Airport in New York City that was shut down. So if this is, I mean, I've kind of gotten this vague, people have been talking about this event that's supposed to be looming in the near future. And to me, the intimations that I've gotten are that it has something to do with like um, our ability to use and control electricity. And I don't know, but if they're monitoring the sun and some sort of Carrington event or big mass ejection could definitely fry our ability to use electricity. And if the power were knocked out, I don't want to say that it might be a good thing for humanity, but we are so far detached from our the fact that we're beings on a planet, and we've become divorced from the fact that we should, engage in nature in that way. That ultimately it might be a beneficial thing, at least for a little while, to be unplugged and understand again that we can live in a different way. But obviously, if that happened, there would be so many cascading effects that could be, hugely detrimental that I don't want to court that kind of catastrophe. Um, One of the things that there was a guy who came out and had a prediction that he had made. If I can find his name, Cliff High, and he had said that there was an alien invasion. Likely, he has this AI thing that had scanned the internet and um, makes these predictions, and it said that on December 3rd we would have some sort of an invasion, and this wasn't exactly December 3rd, but it was around then. And then he said that we would see a melee in the skies, and there have been videos posted lately of what look like drones and orbs kind of having conflict of a sort. Like, I mean, the drones seem to approach orbs and then kind of seem to fall out of the sky. The orbs will flash red. Very, very strange. Did you get a sense of any kind of multi-party thing going on, or is this all one source? And is there any conflict happening?
I definitely got a sense of conflict, but more between Earth-based technology and whatever this non-human intelligence is. I definitely got that the powers that be, whoever they are across the world, they're engaged. They're going to begin engaging with this. I'm sure that they already have in some way, trying different kinds of things. I got that they would be unsuccessful ultimately, but that they would be engaging all these different kinds of things that people are describing. And the other thing that I got was that these objects, they're mimicking aircraft, they're mimicking drones, airplanes, all kinds of interesting things, as well as taking on the form of orbs or of different shaped kind of objects. People have seen cubes and rectangular objects floating out there as well
Yeah.
throughout this. So it may be difficult even to figure out what's what up there if you're
Yeah,
looking.
exactly right. Yeah, because I mean
Yeah.
that's something that's been reported throughout history, where there has been, oftentimes black helicopters that people think they're almost UAP-ish in their behavior, and the way they show up and in the numbers they show up, it doesn't seem like it could possibly be actually humans in those crafts.
Right,
So
right. And
that, go ahead.
yeah, oh, I was just to say, and just the sheer number of these things. We have officials reporting 50 of them flying over the beach at once, while sightings are going on in other locations. How can it be that our government, that the United States in some capacity, has this number of extraordinarily expensive, highly sophisticated drones? These things are incredibly expensive, and some of the drone manufacturers are now on the news talking about how they can't understand it because
Yeah.
of the expense and the
Yeah, there
weight
was
and everything involved.
Yeah, there was a guy on Reddit who broke down a little bit of what the costs would be. And he was like, for an operation this size with this many drones, and I mean, what they're doing, how long they're staying in the air, it would be into the hundreds of billions of dollars, and not something that, the government could do on the DL and keep it from folks, which I thought was interesting. Now,
Yes.
a couple points I wanted to drill down into. You mentioned that it's not typical in HI in terms of what we've sometimes encountered or that you've looked at. How do you have any sense of how it relates? And if it's not something that you've encountered before, is this a totally separate thing than like what we've seen at, Roswell or these other encounters that have a lot of times given these same sorts of messages about us and our interactions with the planet? Yeah, I'm just interested in that differentiation and trying to figure out if this is an entirely new thing that we weren't aware of before.
It feels entirely new to me, just in terms of my own experience in this, but that doesn't mean that whatever this presence is hasn't been here for a long time. This is the first time I put my attention on it. It has a very specific feel. And what's really interesting is I kept trying to get a sense of who these beings are, because there was a sentience involved. But I just kept getting something that was so tiny. It was much smaller than the microscopic level. I guess on the quantum level, you'd have to say something akin to that this is where the sentience originates from. And it creates its reality around it, creates that drone shape or that orb or whatever shape it's going for. And whatever it creates has physical presence. It's able to actually create something out of itself that's physical. You can touch it. You could throw something at it and it would ping off the side of it. And I just found that so fascinating. And I had not encountered anything like that before. But it may be that whatever this intelligence is a part of some other intelligence that people are more familiar with, or maybe related in some way, or connected, or maybe works together with. I really have no idea. It was baffling, absolutely baffling.
Yeah. And the red vortex part of it, which was really fascinating as well. You seem to describe like almost like an energy portal, and that these things would go into it and then get recycled, and then new ones would emerge, sort of. Do you have any more insight on that, of what that could possibly reflect, or what how that relates to the intelligence? I mean,
Yeah. I was drawing this as a red spiral. The color red just was screaming at me. It was super important that it was red. And whatever this is, this portal kind of feels like a portal, like a Stargate or a portal, or something that's intangible, but you can pass through it. But it's visible. It's visible, whatever this is. And it spirals, and it was going in and out of the water. And these objects would go in, and then they would get some kind of an upgrade, like learn or relearn something, pass information, get new information. Um, I guess a download and an upload kind of a thing. And then they would reemerge, and new ones would reemerge. Some would come back in and get recycled. The idea of recycling kept coming back over and over, as if when they would go inside this thing, they would cease to exist, but that teeny tiny quantum level sentience would then be given some other kind of, I don't even know what. I don't even have the words for half of this, which is makes it so difficult to describe. But it would be given some other kind of body, not even a body, like a skin. The word skin kept coming out, and then whoop, it would go back out and reappear.
yeah. And you had
Yeah.
described them as kind of like AI, but then not AI, very definitely not AI. What how would you break that down? What do you think that means?
Yeah, it really felt the sentience itself. It was a sentience. So if it were an AI, it would be a general artificial intelligence kind of thing, that the kind of artificial intelligence we have not achieved yet, or at least so they say. Who knows what's going on in the secret
Yeah,
labs,
but we
but
were trying to get to ultimately, yeah.
exactly. And it might be something like that, but it also felt more organic than strictly a technological AI. So if it is an AI, it's on the level of something more natural, which it's hard for me to put into words, but it wasn't a sentience like ours. It definitely felt like it could gather information and then digest it, analyze it, and then it becomes bigger in sentience. So that's why it felt like AI to me, because that's a very AI thing, gathering information, analyzing, and then it can spit out more information. That's how it felt like an AI to me, not like a normal sentience where you really have to take time to learn something, and filter it through your own perspective. It wasn't like that. It was, these things are gathering huge amounts, like insane amounts of information. And then when they go into the spiral, the portal, then this is part of this whole recycle, relearn process. Then they come out smarter.
Yeah.
That's why it feels like AI.
It's interesting to me in reading, Peter Levenda's books and Tom DeLonge with the Secret Machine stuff, and then Tom's statements over the years. He's talked a lot about this hive mind kind of thing,
Yeah.
it being something that the government is aware of and kind of wrestling with how to deal with, and that sort of would fit with what you're talking about. I mean, like there being some sort of collective knowledge base, and these things are updating that part of it.
Yeah, definitely kind of a Borg like situation. That's, I kept thinking, it's kind of like the Borg, just like that. You connect into the collective and then you're infused with all of the collective's information. So definitely hive mind like.
What else do you think that we should know about? I mean, what you saw. There's obviously a lot going on, and you were grokking it, and then there were later sessions. Um, are there things that you found that would be scary for folks, or things that would be more comforting in terms of what is happening?
I think the scariest thing is the shock that it's already providing to some people who are being exposed to this, but the shock that will come as these things increase out there, if this is what's actually happening, that I think that that is going to be the biggest destructive capacity of these things is the whole shock that we are not alone, that there are other things that maybe care for the planet, maybe care for us on some level that's difficult to understand. And I think that that might lead to some chaos out there. This is kind of by definition catastrophic disclosure when the skies
Yeah,
become full of all kinds of things you can't identify.
yeah,
I don't think we need to be afraid of it. I think we need to be more afraid of each other and maybe even afraid of some kind of disinformation campaigns that may arise out of this. We've already seen a tremendous amount of gaslighting on, you know, at the hands of the government, which I think is really wrestling with this. To be fair, this
yeah,
is tough.
absolutely.
This is tough. And how can you possibly come out right now and say we are not alone and those things are actually non-human
And
when
we have no
people,
ability to control it, and can't even
right,
really explain it. Yeah,
exactly, when they're coming down, hundreds of feet over people's homes right now in New Jersey and in other states at this point. How can you possibly go public with that in this way? And I think I got the sense that they're hoping this is going to die down and they're going to, they're taking a step back, trying to figure it out, but it's clearly ramping up. It hasn't stopped, seems to be getting more in your face. And so they may have some super hard decisions to make, but um, I would I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen because I did get in when I started looking at what's going to happen next. That isn't
yeah.
in my online session yet, but it's in the one I'm going to post soon. That what's going to happen next, I get this whole idea of disinformation, a lack of real information, people being told things that aren't entirely true, but on the back end of that, it's really a reaction to trying to figure out how best to manage not just the American people but the people of the world, because this is a huge and scary subject probably for most people out there, but I
Yeah.
think we're up to it. I think we're up to it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's going to be a shock, and it's going to change the way we view our power structures. And I mean, judging from what you're saying that they are concerned about with us, that may be what their intent is, and so that is going to be a problem for people who are in power. And how do they deal with that? I mean, it's like they have to weigh whether keeping power for themselves or the current, financial governmental elites is the most important thing, or, being flexible in this new environment is going to be the most important thing. And for the people, it seems pretty obvious, but I mean, governments are in the business of keeping order. And so
Yeah.
that's how they weigh their priorities, and that's only natural. I'm
Eh,
worried about as we go ahead because we're obviously facing the change of an administration, and I wonder if that's partly what's motivating this action now. Because if they've seen that a certain element of human society is getting even more entrenched in the power positions, and so they are like, this is the only way that we're going to affect any kind of change. Not to be political, but yeah, that's some of the concerns that I've sort of had and thoughts I've had.
Yeah, I definitely got a sense of an interest in our political structure. Absolutely, that came up. It was a really unusual interest in it too, that they were watching trends, that they had this knowledge of trends going, or just like everything, not just trends, but like everything that's ever happened. And and there's a sense that they had a sense of future things too. I mean, heck, we can remote view the future. So whatever they are, they're aware of time to them is so much broader than our quick passing moments of time. They see time in these huger chunks that go back to the past and back into the future. That came
Like cyclic
across.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a cyclic thing, definitely cyclic, really
Yeah.
interesting. And they definitely had an interest in the power structure. And I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen, especially like you mentioned, the change of administration, two very different kinds of administrations. And I think that the current administration, because they're wrapping things up, they're having a hard time dealing with this.
Mm.
And then the new administration, I'm not really sure what to expect. We have President elect Trump coming out and saying, shoot them down. And
Yeah.
maybe that's where we get the skirmishes in the sky that others are predicting and that I
Yeah.
saw in the sessions. That may be what that comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all, I mean, it's like, are we actually here? I mean, I kind of want to pinch myself. And I mean, if this is actually happening, this is what we've been talking about for years, you for decades. And I don't know where it leads. And it's scary, but it's also exciting. And I don't want to, it's like it could be potentially catastrophic for, humanity. But then I'm also find myself looking forward to it in a way. And maybe that's just the nature of where we're at. But how are you handling this and thinking about this, having been a student of ufology for so long, and then also having this, capability of tapping into sort of the deeper structures of reality? What are your thoughts in this historic moment?
Okay, this is one of the reasons that I was so unsettled doing this session. So unsettled, and it wasn't just the nature of what I was picking up, but because it's so real, and I knew this is like real time. This is right now. It's one thing to remote view a crash from 1947 in New Mexico. It's one thing. Oh, it's way in the past. Of course there are aliens. Of course we're not alone. It's one thing to have even seen a UFO and one small moment in time, but to have such a large scale happening and unfolding and increasing was literally an ontological shock for me. And if it's an ontological shock for me, who has been into this for 50 years,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
can't imagine what it would be like to somebody who hasn't been paying attention to this subject. And for good reason. There's lots of other things to pay attention to on the planet. And so I think that a lot of people are going to have a very hard time going forward, and they'll be looking for answers. And hopefully, our government will be able to provide some kind of truths to the American public and to the world at large. Fingers crossed, anyway. But
yeah,
I think that they've known that something was coming for a while. I think that that's why the whole disclosure process started really in earnest in 2017 with the New York Times articles, Lou Elizondo, director of ATIP, coming out to the public and
yeah,
talking about his experiences. And then the Navy pilots, it's been snowballing and been, of course, a topic of conversation in our congressional halls and the hearings and everything. I think that this is snowballing. And I
yeah.
think it's because they knew something was going to happen. And maybe this is what they knew was going to happen, or at
Well,
least the beginning of it, a part of it.
yeah, and I think that the incremental sort of release of information was meant to prepare us as much as possible.
Yes.
You mentioned your own ontological shock. I wanted to ask you sort of a personal question about this process and everything else. I mean, to be exposed to levels of reality that aren't typical, and then also like the intellectual I don't know, the thinking of possibly an alien intelligence. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacts you personally? Is there any risk to that? I remember reading early on with some folks who had done some remote viewing. Project 8200 was one that was mentioned, and the guy was like, it can potentially be dangerous for folks to remote view these things because it can, you can get noticed by non-human intelligences and bad things can happen. Do you find that that's the case, and how do you protect yourself if that is the case? And then with like students who are remote viewing this, is there a risk to them for, looking into this thing? How do you weigh that, and how do you view that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's kind of a hot topic in remote viewing for sure. And people fall on one side or the other of that question, whether you should or even shouldn't be looking at these kinds of things. But it's my feeling and my experience over just about 30 years that we're already connected to everything already. That's why we can do this. It's a non-local universe. It's already a part of us. Whatever these things are, they're already there. They're probably interacting with us all the time, but we don't even realize it because, we have all kinds of filters in place that can be
Yeah.
hard to push through. And, learning remote viewing teaches you to open that aperture and to have more of these experiences. And in all this time and in the hundreds, if not thousands, of non human things I've looked at, I've never had an experience that followed me home, so to speak, or that bothered me after the fact. Now, I've had plenty of experiences while doing a session that I didn't like. I didn't like that alien or that one or this situation, some of the abduction accounts, things like that. Looking at that can be a little scary. And in the moment, it's scary, but it's just like remote viewing a scene from World War II. It's that kind of a feeling. You're unhappy with something. You can take on the emotions of the people that are there, or the non-human intelligence if it has emotions akin to humanity. But I don't think that it's dangerous. I truly, truly don't. I think that it's important that people who get it or are interested in remote viewing have a comfort level with, they can pick and choose what they want, the kinds of things they want to remote view, or work with a trainer that has the same kind of perspective that you do on this. And I did let my students know before class began that we were going to perhaps be looking at something, one or two things that may be non-human. We also did a crop circle session, which was fascinating.
Oh, that's
But
cool. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. And
I find those.
they were all shocked by what they got and a little unsettled too, but they were fine.
Yeah. I mean, part of me is like, if I had your ability, and this kind of thing was going on, I would almost be like constantly doing it, right? Like, I mean, or at least constantly collating. Like, I would take my stuff and I'd compare it with what other remote viewers are doing. Is that conversation happening among sort of the prominent remote viewers? And is that sort of global picture of what everyone's finding sort of fitting together in any interesting ways that you can share with us that maybe weren't revealed by your own personal work but seem to fit?
Yeah, there's been a number of other remote viewers who are looking at this as well and who also have predicted various things about it. The group at Farsight had done some sessions before this began and said there was going to be a huge non-human intelligence presence on Earth that was going to start making itself known. So they were definitely picking up on what's happening from their descriptions, and others are starting to look at it now. And of course, within my group, I have like about 100 viewers now in my group, and everyone's talking about this. And I'm going to start tasking people on different aspects of it so we can figure out the particulars of what's happening and what this is,
Yeah.
and how might we respond.
Which just seems like what would be the most valuable thing is to have a collated picture from a number of inputs. And, I mean, like we kid ourselves that the US government stopped remote viewing in the 90s or whatever else. I'm sure they've been doing this for a while and they have that sort of data set, which is informing a lot of what they're doing. But
I'm
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely certain of that. That they've got their best and brightest working on this right now and probably have been for quite some time.
yeah. So I guess, I mean, to sort of round out this discussion, would you say people can do in their own lives to help prepare them for this? Or, I mean, how should they be thinking about this as we move into what might be a very chaotic future? Is there anything that people can do to kind of control the chaos in their own lives rather than contributing to the, whatever hysteria might arise, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that it's easy to get obsessed with this topic. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed.
Yeah, as am I.
And, but it's important to take time to spend time with friends and with family. Get outside. Grounding is so important on this planet. Get outside and enjoy nature. Spend some time in the great outdoors, completely disconnected from technology. And I think that that'll give you a better perspective on what's happening. And I think it's important to keep in mind that whatever this is and whatever all of these presences have been that have interacted with us, they've been with us since our very beginning. They've always been with us, whatever they are. And they've never destroyed us. They've never harmed huge numbers of us. There have been, encounters where people got close to a ship and perhaps got radiation type burns. I mean, it's not perfect,
Yeah.
but there doesn't seem to be, this doesn't seem to be an Independence Day scenario where they're going to float in and take over and start shooting us down. I don't see anything like that happening whatsoever. The message seems to be wake up, watch, look, we're here. And we're here, you're there, we're all part of this amazing universe. And I think that if people look at it that way, it becomes a little less scary. But I think until, we have all of our religious upbringing, spiritual beliefs, and our cultural conditioning, and getting over those hurdles is going to be the hardest part for everybody, even for somebody like me who's been obsessed with this topic her entire life. Yeah.
Last question, I guess. Do you think that they are looking for some kind of prolonged engagement or joining of our, like, existences? I mean, is this like going to be a matriculation, or is this just, a declaration that we're here and be aware of us? Or is it like, now that you're aware, we're going to try and sort of live with you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not entirely sure. I think that what I'm getting is this is more of a declaration at this
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
But it does seem that there is something in play that involves the future. And I'm not sure what that is. I haven't been able to figure that out yet, but I'm working on it, decoding the messages, and I will do future sessions. I'm sure people will give me future things to look at around this topic. So I
And I
think
will link all that
that's
in the
pretty
description,
exciting.
and so people can find your work. And I'd love to have you back again soon to talk more about it as this unfolds. I appreciate your experience and expertise and insight. It's very, very valuable in this moment.
Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks, James. I don't know much, but I had a good time doing this, and I really think that something's happening.
Yeah. Well, I encourage people to watch the video that you've posted. It's a fascinating watch. And then when the next ones come as well, I think that we should all watch those and use that maybe as a way to sort of try and gain some insight into what we're seeing, because I think it's an important part. And I think the US government does too. So,
They sure do.
all right. Well, thank you very much, Birdie. I appreciate you.
Oh, thanks, James, so much. I appreciate you too. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk.